Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. We are live on the YouTube channel for an emergency podcast. Some news we kind of have been expecting if you've been around Illini Inquirer for the past week, but huge news to have it official from Illinois. Orlando Antigua is returning to the Illini. Spent the last 3 years under John Calipari, where he really made his name. Is under John Calipari, Kentucky, the first time around, 2009 to 14. Of course, was here for Illinois for 4 years under Brad Underwood's first staff to go from bottom of the Big Ten to top of the Big Ten with getting Kofi Coburn. Andres Feliz will live on in all our hearts, including mine, because I loved watching that dude play. The great version of Andre Curbelo he was able to bring in here, and you wonder what he could have done the next couple years after that, but goes to Kentucky. No one could really blame him. Illinois fought to keep him, but John Calipari goes to Arkansas, and it was first reported, Derek, that Orlando Antigua would follow. Not so fast, my friend. Brad Underwood gets involved, and he gets his man. So to replace Chester Frasier, you knew Brad Underwood had a plan here. Plan A was Orlando Antigua. He gets his guy, Derek. Why is this such a big deal? Why are we saying this is such a big deal?
Well, he's one of the best assistants in the country. He's been paid like it. I would imagine he will be continue to get paid like it as he makes this move back to Champaign. His ability to get talent, that's been proven over a long course of time at Kentucky. I mean, he was at Calipari at Memphis before that. And then obviously at Illinois, you mentioned some of those names. I mean, Illinois does not get Kofi Coburn, who was such a crucial part of that resurgence for Illinois, a two-time All-American. And to be able to get him, to be able to have the connections, to get into the right rooms and to bring the talent to the table for Brad Underwood, but also to develop it too. I think that's something that he obviously deserves a lot of credit for as a very highly respected big man coach that had to get the most out of Kofi Coburn. I know he had a lot of talent during his first tenure at Kentucky and obviously second too, but Anthony Davis, DeMarcus Cousins, Julius Randle, some guys that he coached there in the front court in Lexington, even in his second stint, Oscar Tshiebwe was a pretty good big man down there as well. So you got to have the talent to be able to get those type of results, but to be able to get the most out of it is certainly something that he can speak for and has been doing for a long time. And as far as the connections, it obviously played itself out New York area, East Coast, and then internationally, especially the Latin American basketball community when you got Feliz and Curbelo and some of those other guys where you look at Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, those are some big areas for him. And he played on the Dominican national team, coached the Dominican national team at one point, and is really highly connected and highly respected back in those areas. So as Illinois pushes forward and is going to dabble a lot in the portal, I think that he's a guy that's going to have a lot of ability to go out there and sell the program and have those connections play out for him and just the reputation that he carries and now to push forward with Illinois too. So just like you kind of said, I mean, every list, whether you're an AD, a coach, any hot board, any kind of short list has a shoot your shot guy at the very, very top. This was Brad Underwood's, and he connected on that first swing.
I haven't had a ton of time to think about this, Derek, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here. I think this is the splashiest assistant coach hire in Illinois athletics history. I'm trying to think of others. Obviously, Illinois football, like the relative of splashy isn't as big. Like Orlando the first time around was pretty splashy. To get him after he went back to Kentucky, back to Calipari, to get him back here, I think says a lot about Brad Underwood. I think it says a lot as well about Josh Whitman and the financial resources he has armed his head coach with. And if people didn't listen to the podcast with me and him, like I talked to him about that is, $40 million into the renovation of Ubben Basketball Complex. Now, Brad Underwood was one of the top 10 highest paid coaches in the country, right? And he has been the last several years. You had to keep that guy. And he's also armed him since the beginning of Brad Underwood getting here with one of the highest salary staff pools in the country. And I will be eager to see what Orlando Antigua is making, along with Tim Anderson, along with Jeff Alexander, and the rest of the staff, because I think it's going to be one of the top. Maybe 5 in the country. It's going to be up there. So he has armed him with that. And then you think of the NIL. Illinois, I don't know if they're Kentucky levels of NIL, but when you go to the Big Ten, I think it's Indiana, and then it's probably Illinois and Ohio State. Nebraska is actually involved there. Maryland is involved there. But like Illinois is armed, right, in this arms race of acquiring talent, both on the coaching staff, building the facilities, all of that. I'll let Josh Whitman sort that out, how you do that debt-wise and how you do that with a football program that's not bringing in the money of some of these other ones. But we know what the Big Ten money's doing, and he is investing it into that basketball program, and the return he's getting on investment is huge. So Brad Underwood, the fact that you can go out there in the market and steal away a coach from Calipari a couple years after he stole one from you, that's got to be a great feeling to have that kind of resources.
No, yeah, absolutely. And they're operating like a big time program. They have the backing of it, with Josh Whitman doing what he's doing. And they fought Kentucky to the tooth and nail there in 2021. You know, the talk around here, Orlando was telling people he turned down some money by going back to Cal and Lexington, because you had that kind of two programs playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with Orlando, and a millionaire on an annual level as far as that goes. And Kentucky got him, but I think there was more money on the table for him at Illinois if he were to want to stay. So they fought him. They fought there against Kentucky like a big-time program. They've been able to fight to keep Brad Underwood. If they weren't well compensating him and giving him the resources that he felt was necessary to build the program, to sustain it, then you may not see him currently here still in Champaign after the successful run that he's had, because you see around the country how some of these coaching candidates are bouncing around and taking advantage of some opportunities, especially where there is NIL, especially where there is a lot of just resources and support. So I think that Josh Whitman's aggressiveness of going out there and allocating this money and the backing and support, also the alumni base is getting rewarded for what they're doing. When you look at the NIL, it takes very willing donors and involvement and all that to build a practice facility that you have right now and up there. I mean, I obviously have not toured all the practice facilities around the country, but it looks like one of the best out there as far as the innovation and just how much more money they poured into that. So that takes a support group from the alumni side of things, the money raising that they've been able to do to make everybody happy and to further this thing along for the Illini basketball program. So I think that Josh definitely deserves a ton of credit, and Brad had to put the product on the court to have Josh believing in him the way that he is, and to have the fans believing in him the way that he is as well.
Yeah, we know how passionate this fan base is. It feels like it's weaponized right now. Like it feels like, but you need that leadership to be able to do it. And you need the winning to inspire them to do it. So the marriage of Whitman, Underwood, and this fan base seems like a really good one now. And now, Derek, like you think of what the capabilities of this program are. Brad Underwood said in his statement, I want to bring it up because I think his words were careful here. Like, we are beyond thrilled to welcome Orlando back to our program. The addition of him to our staff is the latest step in elevating Illinois basketball as we continue to compete for championships. Orlando is held in the highest regard in our profession and someone I have tremendous trust in. Coaching, recruiting, player development, player relationships. He is the complete package. Orlando helped us win a lot of games and cut down nets the last time around, something he's done throughout his career. We aspire to do more of that together in Champaign in the years ahead. That line of the latest step in elevating Illinois basketball, I think it's the right term. Like Josh Whitman and Brad Underwood and everybody else, Elite Eight getting back there is great. Big Ten championships are great. They aspire to really win a national championship. And these are the kind of moves you have to do to get there, because you need somebody who can get dudes, Derek. We'll talk about that here in a minute. You need a guy who can really help people develop. And I know we focus on the recruiting, and we'll get into that here in a second, but he developed DeMarcus Cousins. I know he's a McDonald's All-American. How much they still have to develop in the year they're there. Anthony Davis, generational talent. But then you look at guys like Trey Lyles, Oscar Shibwe, you mentioned, was at West Virginia for a year. I don't know if anybody remembers that because he didn't perform to the level he did at Kentucky to be a national player of the year and All-American at all those levels. So Kofi Coburn, his first couple of years, a guy I mentioned, Georgie Bashanishvili. The development he had with him his first 2 years was pretty amazing. So I think you're getting the best of both worlds, and a guy who's got a heck of a resume and getting dudes, but also getting those guys to the pros. The latest one is Reed Shepherd. He recruited Reed Shepherd, who's a 4-star recruit, is going to be a top 10 draft pick in the draft.
Yeah, and Andres Felice wasn't super highly touted either, and obviously a great evaluation of being able to bring him in as well. So I fully agree with that. Yeah, I think that when you have conversations with guys in the portal, the high school scene, if you're going to take big swings, you want somebody because that's what recruits are looking for, is just the track record of being able to help get guys to the league, help get guys to maximize their potential. I don't think there's side note, I don't think there's a happier man in America right now than probably Kerry Booth, who's going to come in and have Orlando Antigua and Adam Fletcher to work with over the next couple of years, assuming he's here for that. But yeah, that's just an example of what you can expect with Orlando, of development and someone that knows what it looks like at the highest level, and then to go out there and utilize his connections. And I would imagine that as we push forward in this last, I don't know if last is the right way to say it. I hope it is for this portal window. But whatever we have left, whether it's going to be another couple of weeks, or it's going to be into June, Illinois rounding out this roster, I would imagine he has his fingerprints very much involved in their talent pursuits and have his connections come to the table and utilize him. I know that for a fact because we'll talk about maybe some other guys here, but Ben Humrichous from Evansville is someone that I think was, without this news, probably would have been visiting sooner, but I don't think it's a coincidence that he's going to come in after Orlando's official, have Orlando on campus. That's a guy that you want around recruits because he just has an infectious personality, very highly respected, and obviously, like you said earlier, I mean, played such a huge part of building this thing on the front end, and now having a chance to step back into it and try to take them to another level.
Yeah, I mean, people can hate on, Antigua or Chin Coleman for leaving. Those guys were huge parts of building what you did. And I try to give Chin his respect because, I mean, he got Iowa Sumo. This program is not what it is without Iowa Sumo, without Coleman Hawkins. Like, there were some really good players that those guys, I mean, he went and got Brandon Pajimski too. And that turned into a pretty dang good player. So those guys were huge in building this up, along with, Stephen Gentry, some other guys, and Chester Frasier the last couple of years. I think it was a really good assistant. This is another level of talent accrual, Derek, and let's dive into that as we got 600 plus people on the live YouTube channel. We appreciate you guys. Hit that like button, subscribe to us, hit the notifications bell so when we do these, you guys are alerted for that. But you've been in these AAU gyms, which may be not as important these days as we've talked about prep versus transfer portal, but you have to have relationships. You've seen Orlando Antigua walk into an AAU gym. What is that like? Can you explain the connections and just the vibe that he has as a recruiter? What makes him so good at it?
Yeah, no, he's definitely one of those guys that has a great presence about him, knows everybody as far as like the New York basketball scene, which there's a lot of talent there, New York City and just up in that area. So he's very, very well established, being a guy that's grew up in the Bronx and just has been around that scene for a long time. So he's someone that carries a reputation there and just his ability, I think, just interacting with players, especially those that are, that are Spanish speaking. I know that's something that I noticed when he was recruiting under Cabello, just them having their own conversations in Spanish at times. And I know that recruits and coaches aren't really supposed to talk to each other. I don't think I'm going to get him in trouble here during these like AAU things, but like Andre would make a play on the court while they were recruiting him and like turn and say something to like a quick liner to Orlando in Spanish. At that time, it was probably a good time that I should have put in a crystal ball. I think it probably did not too long after that. But yeah, I mean, just his ability to make guys feel he's such a positive persona about him. Just got a big personality. You feel like when you talk to him, you're automatically his friend and just somebody that you want to be around. A very fun-loving type of guy, confident, and likes to get to work on the court as well. So, and I think also just you sense such a confidence that he has in Brad Underwood. And obviously this doesn't happen if he doesn't have that as well. And just kind of digging around this thing. And I knew that before. They had a long-standing relationship even after he left here. But I think that Orlando coming back is a huge vote of confidence for Brad. And he feels like Brad is to use something that he said, like a dynamite head coach. It's just a guy that you want to play for and that he obviously has had a lot of success with. So just the personality, I think, the connections that are well established that run deep beyond the kids, but to their parents, to their AAU coaches. And he is somebody that you want to be around.
So I don't know from the Arkansas side of things, but if Matt Norlander from CBS, who's well connected, if he's reporting that Orlando Antigua was expected to go to Arkansas, I would imagine that means John Calipari wanted Orlando Antigua in Arkansas. And this was a big part of his staff. I mean, he brought him back from Illinois, paid him a lot of money. It was a $900,000 base salary at Kentucky, and he had retention bonuses that put him over seven figures for sure. So it'll be interesting to hear from Orlando of why he wanted to come with Brad Underwood. I mean, to go to Brad Underwood over John Calipari, and I know, Arkansas fans got upset at me because I said the luster might have like gone off of John Calipari the last couple of years. I think it clearly has a little bit. Doesn't mean it's not a good hire for Arkansas. Or he can't have great success with the resources Arkansas has, a great program. But the fact that Illinois and Brad Underwood were able to get Antigua back over Arkansas, from my view of it, is a really, really encouraging sign if you're an Illinois fan.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident without knowing, like you said, everything on the Arkansas side that Calipari wanted him there. They wanted him to follow and expected him at the time to make that move with him to Fayetteville. But I do think it speaks to how much the first exit for Orlando going back to Kentucky was about Lexington. I think a lot. Not to say that him and Cal aren't really close and that there's not a long-standing strong bond there, and that if his old boss called him up and say, "Hey, I'm going to point at turmoil with the program, need you back, we're going to pay you a lot of money," that didn't resonate for sure. But I know that his wife really has thought highly of Lexington and missed their time there. And his daughter was going to school there at UK at the time when UK came calling. So I think without it being about Lexington anymore, when it was about going somewhere else, then it became a different circumstance and different thing that he had to think on. So I know he met also with Mark Pope, and I don't know maybe how real O was trying to really stay there. I think it was, as far as I understand, I think it was mutually kind of agreed upon that it was best for a clean slate at Kentucky, both for Mark Pope's side of things and even for Orlando. I think he knew, obviously, at the time that Illinois was open and that the opportunity was there for him to go somewhere where he was familiar with Brad, and that they were going to be very much in the mix for him. So I think it's huge to be able to not just have it be an automatic where O is following Cal down to Arkansas, or that if it didn't work out in Lexington, that he was just going to open it back up, and I'm sure he'd be highly commanded out there on the national market. That this was done. Like, this was something that he knew was going to happen, that Illinois, this has been, the smoke's been pretty, there's been a lot of it.
We'll take you behind the scenes. Like when we heard Chester was leaving, and that had been in the works for a while, the first name we heard was Orlando Antigua, that they were going to take their swing there. And I'd imagine they were telling us that for a reason, that we have a pretty good idea he's going to listen. There were some other names thrown out, Eric Pastrana, Matt Figger, who'd been under Brad Underwood or been coaching with Underwood before, but it was clear they were taking a big swing and had a pretty good idea they had a chance there.
Right, for sure. And I don't know that it was like a Chester doesn't leave if O wasn't a certainty type of thing. I think it was something from the Chester standpoint with Illinois that, and we reported on this, like the fit just, it became evident, I think, for both sides that it was better for both parties if they went in a different direction. And look, Chester's in a good landing spot as the associate head coach at West Virginia, and maybe that program's going to be more defensive minded, be more about not recruiting over Amani and Sincere. And from Illinois' standpoint, they obviously, O's a respect to Chester. I really like Chester, and I think he's a really, really good coach. I mean, O's an upgrade, in my opinion, as an assistant in terms of a talent getter and just being the pecking order of assistant coaches. So it worked out well for Illinois. Hope it works out for Chester. It looks like it did so far.
Yep.
And but as soon as that opened up, like you said, O was at the top, and there was an indication at least that it was going to be a real possibility.
By the way, count me as somebody who loved Chester's tweet with Denzel today saying, "Hey, I was taking something with me." Illinois was obviously over recruiting, Sincere Harris for a while here. Amani Hansberry, I like the kid a lot. I think he's going to be really good at West Virginia. Listen, it was time to split. It just was not a fit at that time. I thought it was a good hire at the time. He helped you win, but I think Chester's going to succeed there. And I'm with you. The fact that Sincere and Amani are going with him, I think it's great for West Virginia. I think those two can be a really good impact for a program that maybe wants to build a different way than Illinois. They bought a roster last year and it did not work for them, right? They tried to do this the year after Bob Huggins gets fired, but I think DeVries is going to do a good job there. He's got a son there with him. Now you had a guy like Amani Hansberry, who I think could be a double threat for them as a sophomore. I love it. I love it for them. I think those guys are going to get a great opportunity. And I think that's how Chester's going to want to build, is do it that way. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about Sincere and Amani, because I think those are two really good additions for West Virginia.
They are, for sure. I don't know exactly as far as what the schemes are going to be for DeVries going in there. If it was old school press Virginia, I think Sincere fits right in. He would have played definitely for Hugs as far as the 94 feet and the pressure defense, creating turnovers, havoc on defense like that. That obviously fits his makeup. We'll see what his offensive development looks like. We had heard good things as far as what he showed in practice, but it is something that he's going to have to translate into game actions. And on the scout team, a lot of stuff is running through him. That's probably not going to be the case in games. And Amani, I was a huge fan of Amani. Still am a big fan of Amani. It's hard to see him go for sure. I get it, though, from Illinois' standpoint of recruiting somebody like Kerry Booth, because just a more natural fit, I think, with Merez as that true stretch four. Where Amani's more of a tweener. Can he shoot it well enough to play the four? Is he mobile enough to defend on the perimeter at the five? He's 6'7". Can he be able to be a rim protector? Probably not. You're just giving something up with him, although I think he can still be a really good college player. But that's a great start for West Virginia to get some guys that are proven, high major players to an extent and top 100 recruits. Amani definitely there in that top 50 range. And, it shows connections, how much they matter. Chester was able to use his connections and guys that he recruited, bring them in. We'll see what Orlando's connection can do for Illinois in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and Chester's East Coast connections could probably play better when they're close to the East Coast, too. I think that can help with them. But
let's get Jaden Epps next. I don't think Epps is in the portal. He's not, but there may have been a whisper about that somewhere out there.
Something to watch. But Derek, people want to know, what's Orlando Antigua's immediate impact on this roster? And I think we hit a little bit of a pause with Illinois pushing really hard. No official visitors here this past week. You mentioned it. Ben Humrichous, who I don't want to jinx anything, but my guys don't get the jinx as much as Derek Piper's guys. Humrichous is one of my favorite transfers. Just such an intriguing offensive skill set. We can break him down coming up here in a little bit, but they paused him. They want him to come when Orlando Antigua gets here to come on an official visit. But we know the connections Antigua has. One of those guys is Kobe Brea, who's one of the top prospects in the portal, was a sixth man at Dayton, but the top overall shooter in the country, shot 50% from three at 200 plus attempts. Just a flamethrower at 6'6", ridiculous player that everybody in the country wants, including UConn, which can sell that Cam Spencer sell to him. But he played on the Dominican Republic. His parents are from the Dominican Republic, played in that program. If you don't know, Orlando Antigua, from the Dominican, grew up in the Bronx. Brea grew up in the Bronx too. So there's a lot of connections there. This guy hasn't entered the portal, but I think it's safe to speculate on this guy as well, Derek. David Jones, who Illinois recruited when Antigua was here, declared for the draft and is maintaining his college eligibility. He did not say maintaining eligibility to go to Memphis, but this is a guy who averaged 20 and 8 last year. Connection to Orlando Antigua because he's from the Dominican too. So there's just a lot of guys that Orlando Antigua gets you in immediately, and potentially some big men too, because we know he's been recruiting some really good ones to Kentucky.
Yeah, absolutely. Brea, like you said, parents from the Dominican. I've heard that Orlando's actually played against his dad in some Dominican pro league stuff. So you're going to hear that's a common narrative I heard about, like his Curbello's dad, I think, played against Orlando's back in the day. And you just got a lot of those instances, especially for players back in that area. So I don't know that it was official. Somebody tweeted out a list of schools where Brea is likely to choose from. And I don't know that it was something that we should take with a ton of confidence or anything. I just think Illinois is on that list, and it'll be interesting to see as far as Kentucky pushing forward. Like, I think some of the involvement here recently, because O's still been on Kentucky staff, like officially, and has been talking to Brea as part of Kentucky staff here recently. I think that obviously is going to translate to Illinois. It'll be a hard one to get because of UConn and Duke, and everybody in the country seemingly wants him, and who wouldn't want a guy who's 6'6" and shoots it at that clip? But I think that's one that gets you in the door, and will be interesting to see where it develops from there. I mean, David Jones would be a heck of a AJ Storr pivot if there was one to make, where that one doesn't work out, and just to try to fill the shoes or get close to Terrence Shannon as far as a scoring wing. And yeah, I mean, Illinois had him on campus for an official visit back when Orlando was on staff. They were thought to be the favorite to get him for a stretch of months there, and then DePaul swooped in and stole that one. So one that he's very familiar with, that being Orlando, if he were to enter the portal, and we'll see how that goes. I don't know if he'll be a grad or not. So, grad, for anybody that doesn't know this, have beyond the May 1st date to go in the portal. Otherwise, they got to be in by May 1st. So he is definitely one to monitor for sure. And then speaking of guys declared for the draft, I'd be looking at their big man from last year, Ugana Onenso, who's a 7-footer shot blocker as a big man that is not in the portal, but has declared for the draft, projected as I know ESPN has him as a mid-second round pick type of guy, but has said he's leaving the door open. That was someone that Orlando recruited. I think that if he does go in the portal, as far as before the May 1st, he'd have to, because he's not a grad. That would be someone that if the feedback doesn't lead up to what he wants in the draft, that there's a rim protector that Illinois could have a real connection to with Orlando. And they definitely want somebody at the 5 that can block some shots and give them some more of that presence that they had last year.
We're always going to get asked about, the potential of these signees at Kentucky, Derek, and Boogie Fland, a 5-star composite prospect in the class of 2024, decommitted. Orlando recruited him, I believe, or at least part of that staff. So Garrett asked Boogie Fland, do you think Illinois gets involved for an 18-year-old guard?
I don't know. They do. I think that maybe you dabble with it. Obviously, when you have the connection, and for Orlando to be tabbed as a lead recruiter for that, a 5-star McDonald's All-American type, to be able to get him on board at Kentucky. I think when you look at it, Boswell proven in terms of like a high major starter, but he's still only 19 years old. I don't know if they want a backcourt of 19 and 18 years old. Now the talent you can't argue with. I'd put him on the board to see as far as an option goes.
5 stars. I don't need.
Yeah, I wouldn't say absolutely no, but I do think their focus is on a bigger guard and to try to get some more experience. And I think that especially if they go the Humrichous route, not to say that he'd be a guaranteed starter if they get him, but you look at him as a 6'9" versatile forward. Like maybe you're playing a big lineup like you were last year. If you get Boswell, big wing, maybe it's Trey White, Humrichous, and a 5 to round out your starting lineup. And I know it's only April and I'm making starting lineups, but that's just kind of a little bit of a thought process as of right now.
All right, I'm on record. I love Ben Humrichous. Evansville transfer, started his career at the NAIA level, which is Huntington, I believe he went to, an Indiana native. Derek, Illinois getting more of those guys here recently. Dre Gibbs-Allhorn, Jake Davis, also an Indiana native, of course, Luke Goody as well. But I want your opinion. What do you see when you watch Ben Humrichous? What does he bring to the court? Because it sounds like Illinois is going to get him on campus here shortly.
He's unbelievable offensively. Unbelievably skilled, 6'9", ability to shoot the heck out of it, 40+% from 3, catch and shoot, extraordinaire, come off screens, and just such a quick and fluid release. Someone that stretches the floor if he's playing the 4. I don't know that maybe he plays a little bit of small ball 5 at his next stop. I'm not saying that that's going to be maybe it won't be his primary position. I don't think could slide to the 3 in a bigger lineup. Although the question, as I'm going to get into here in a bit, is defense. But as far as his offense goes, you can use him in just so many different ways because he's great in the mid post. He can kind of play a little bit of booty ball action. He can play in some ball screen stuff off the dribble. Not a burst guy, not a guy that's probably going to drive by a lot of people, but he's shown that he can initiate some offense. And he's kind of a little bit Marcus Damask-like, in my opinion. He's coming from the Valley. He's a skilled forward with some size to him. I'd say Marcus is a little bit more of a better athlete, or just a guy that maybe is just a little more smooth with his footwork and change direction, even though Marcus wasn't like a twitchy athlete and had some defensive limitations himself. Obviously, Humrichous a better shooter, but I just love all that you can do with him offensively. And then defensively, that's kind of the question is who can he guard? Can he guard on the perimeter? Although I do like the fact that 6'9", 220, if he's guarding somebody that's at the 4, is trying to be physical with him, trying to compete around the paint, I think he can do that. So I really, really like him. I would take him and push for him. And I think Illinois will try to do that. He started his official visit slate this weekend at Louisville.
Yeah, he'd be a priority for me, just because offensively, if that they are leaning that. Brad told us that on Tuesday in Gordyville is, yeah, we're leaning offense. That's where we're going. That's where the game is going. We had success with it for the 8 Elite 8 teams. The top 4 offenses in the country were in the Elite 8 this past year, and that's what they want to do. They got to get better defensively, but I feel like the offense is going to be the key. And Humrichous, I think, is going to average double digits wherever he goes. I think Boswell's that kind of guy. I think Trey White's that kind of guy. And then you're probably still looking for a stud here. Like they're still looking for maybe a stud piece, but I think Humrichous can be a go-to scorer on a very, very good team. Because I know it was Evansville. I know it was the Missouri Valley, but you turn on that film, Derek, and the offensive skill set is really, really enticing. So that's a big one. Anybody else we should be looking for during the next couple of weeks here?
Yeah, I think that we've talked about Brea. It'll be interesting to see how much traction they get. I know they'll be definitely involved with him, with Orlando's connections, and just the fact that he fits the type of maybe that 2-spot shooter with some size. I think that one thing they definitely wanted Dante Maddox and somebody that they felt would fit pretty well with Boswell as an on-off guard that could shoot it really well. There were, if you were asking preferences, maybe there was a thought of, yeah, if we could get more size than Maddox, and it worked out that that's the direction they'd be interested in going. So maybe a bit of a bigger backcourt instead of 2 6'2" guards. I think that's one thing that they probably are considering with Fland, where he doesn't have college experience and he's also a little undersized in terms of playing kind of that combo off guard spot. So I think, yeah, Brea, we'll see what happens with some of these draft guys. Humrichous right now, I think is a real focus and priority for them right now. Otherwise, I don't know that there's maybe an obvious one. You know, like Des Claude went into the portal here recently, a pretty highly thought of guard. Doesn't shoot it 24% from 3, 6'6", and good size. Put up 16 a game at Xavier. I think that I don't know that Illinois is all that interested in him. I think they have a little bit of interest, but probably won't push for him. Probably looking for a shooter. So
yeah, need shooters. Like the other kid I liked was Wes Cardit, who just committed to Providence after official visit. Chicago State kid. I remembered when he was like a 5-star level prospect. Kind of went down a little bit. I know Antigua had some connection to him, but really performed well at Chicago State. That's a bad program. They actually won some games when he was there, so I'll give him credit for that. But I'm interested to see what his transition to being maybe a secondary option would be with a Boswell, but I thought he would have been a really solid transfer get, but I think they're shooting high. Like for that position, it feels like they're shooting really high there.
They are. Yeah, they want a stud for sure. And I think that's why you're still having patience and have to wait and see who else is going to hit the portal here before May 1st, and then some of the buzz maybe on some grads that would possibly go in. So there are still some leaves to uncover, I think, as you figure this out, who will be targets and which way they'll go. I think that with Orlando coming in, I imagine he has some ideas as far as the 5 spot goes. That's definitely a spot that they want to add some help at. I know Brad, when we talked to him at Gordyville, said after adding Booth, 1, maybe 2 bigs in addition to what they currently have. So that's something to look for. Definitely the scoring big guard, wing type of alpha, maybe your best player, depending on who you can get. And then Humrichous, I think he categorized possibly as one of those bigs, being 6'9" as a front court piece, but they definitely really like him. And I think that they're prioritizing him as someone that they definitely want.
They currently have 3 scholarships open. We would not be surprised if there was another departure as Illinois continues to try and upgrade over some of the pieces that they have returning. So I feel like they're going to add 3 more pieces from the portal here, Derek. And I would imagine if that happens, 1 more player would leave the program. Like just doing the math, doing the playing time game, that would be my most likely scenario there. But they need a guard, they need that wing, and at least 1 big, I think 2. So that would be my positions in need. And Humrichous could be obviously one of those as a kind of a stretch forward there. But yeah, I would imagine 3 transfers still here left, even though they've already added 4.
Yeah, 7 transfers, possibly 8, and that sounds insane.
2 freshmen, 7 transfers. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the way it's going, and you gotta reload this thing and get talent. And if you find the right fits, I'm excited about what Illinois has done so far with Boswell, and I like the potential of Booth for sure. They're pretty confident on Trey White that he can have a nice bounce back season, and we'll see what Jake Davis is. I think he's a bench piece that maybe comes in and brings some shooting. Obviously, has some years to grow into who he's going to be with 3 years of eligibility left, but they have some big swings left to take. I do agree with you as far as just making it work. You wonder, and it's hard to do this sometimes because you don't know exactly what a certain player is thinking. But, if I'm Luke Goody and I see Ben Humrichous come in and you already have Trey White as someone that's going to man the 3/4, and if you go out and take a big swing on another wing, what's he going to do? I want a Luke Goody on my team. I want that shooter. I want a guy that brings some leadership and some toughness. And if he's comfortable with coming off the bench and playing that kind of role, I'm not saying he's absolutely off the bench, because you bring in these guys, you let them play it out during the summer and the fall and see who earns their time. But that's one thing that you'd wonder about. I think Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn is locked in as far as you can be locked in as of right now. But I like having him. Nico Moretti, what would that look like? I don't know. They're going to add another point guard, so maybe he's bought in on that.
I think Dre or him has a role next year. All right, like behind Boswell, I don't know how many minutes that is. Maybe it's 12 minutes combined for that spot, but I think there's an opportunity for Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, especially right there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. We'll see. I mean, they talked a lot about Dre having some ability in ball screens, and that was something as they recruited him that they felt like his feel on the ball was pretty good, and it was better in comparison to what they had in Jaden Epps. They thought it was going to be more of an avenue there to turn him into a playmaker. Now, last year, I think he obviously didn't have the opportunities because of what Marcus established himself as and playing Ty as kind of, it wasn't really a point guard, but playing him in the backcourt. So there was just guys in front of him, but he did play, let's be honest, I mean, he played sped up. He played fast. He took some shots he probably shouldn't have taken and didn't make a lot there as far as an efficiency goes, but could take a leap as a sophomore. I think that's well within expectation. He's a talented guy. I think everything I've heard on Ty is that he's probably bought in on Illinois, but
which Derek, I know for a coach that wants to go offense, like Ty Rodgers is kind of an enigma, right?
Yeah.
But I love that guy on my team. He's about the right things. You need somebody to do the dirty work with all these other guys. And I still think Ty has a defensive ceiling that he's not even scratching the surface of right now. So I feel like I want that guy in my program. I want him, Merez, to be my program guys, Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn potentially, because you still need to play defense. And those guys, I think, bring that. And they're about the everyday guy thing that Brad Underwood is all about. So I still want him in my program. And I think there's 15 minutes most games for that. Some games there's going to be 25 minutes. Some games it's going to be 10. And in some games you might struggle a little bit with him on the court. But if you build the right roster around him, I'm not saying he needs to be the focal point, but like the roster they are building, I feel like Ty Rodgers can be a nice X factor for the team. He's just not going to be the star.
Right. Yeah. He can balance out some of the offensive ability. Like if you get a Humrichous who's not going to bring a ton defensively and probably from a rebounding standpoint, it's good to have a Ty Rodgers to do some of those other things. I have no expectation that they would try to encourage him to go elsewhere. It would probably be, if he were to maybe look around and say, Trey White's going to come in and play a good chunk of minutes at either the 4 or the 3, Humrichous 4, maybe slide to the 5 a little bit, maybe slide to the 3 a little bit. If Luke Goody's still here, I just feel like Ty probably is in that, ideally back in that 3-4 role. I think as far as his fit goes, I don't know that he's going to play a lot on the perimeter again. I don't know if I'd want him to. Guarding on the perimeter, I think he could, like you mentioned, the defensive upside. I think we'll see more of that if he's guarding 3s and 4s again, rather than chasing point guards and some off guards like he did last year. So I definitely want him with his rebounding potential. Maybe another offseason can tap into a little bit more offensively, even if it's just finishing at the rim at a higher rate. Like even if it's not a jump shot,
getting free throws, and making 60+% of your free throws. Like I see so many comments of mid-range game. I don't think I want Ty Rodgers shooting mid-range jumpers, and I don't think I need it. If I get shooters around him, attack the basket, get to the free throw line, and finish 60+% at the rim. Like those are the areas I think he needs to improve. And we saw the flashes of it this year, Derek, especially when Terrence was out. Like you saw Ty become this, creator who can attack the basket. We know he's a good passer. So I still think there's some offensive upside. I just don't think it's shooting 15-foot jumpers because I don't think Brad Underwood wants him especially shooting those jumpers anyway.
No, I agree with that. I think it would be an asset to be capable of taking one and just make the defense think about it, but not like, all right, every time you're open, take this 15-footer or let's run stuff to get Ty opportunities in that mid-range.
It's like the Kofi and Omar Payne 15-foot jump shot talk. And I was like, no, just go do what you do.
Right. Some kind of capability to do it would be an asset, would be making the defense at least think about it, which they didn't have to think about it at all last year or at all since he's been in Illinois. But yeah, for sure. I mean, the priority and preference would be, can he be a 60+% at the rim type of guy versus having just a mid-range in his back. He's probably not going to make enough of them to make the math work out. We know that Brad right now is very math oriented and trying to win those, especially offensive efficiency and those type of things. And I just think that's the way he thinks. So analytically, and for a lot of guys, it's not a great shot. For Ayo Dosunmu, it's a great shot. For some guys, it's a great shot. For a guy that's just learning how to get there. But I think also, and to move on from Ty, I think also just a confidence and mentality. If you look back at some of his high school stuff, he just played more freely and confidently and took some jumpers. If you can just instill some confidence back into him and break through that mental side, it feels like it's a little bit of a barrier there. Maybe it doesn't mean that he has to take a lot of jump shots, but just get him to where he's a little bit more unlocked and confident offensively.
Anything else you want to hit on? Because I kind of want to hit on some Big Ten stuff before we get out of here, Derek. Is there anything else Illinois, Antigua related that you feel we need to hit on or we've left unresolved here?
No, I think we're good. I think we're good.
All right. Indiana has the number one transfer class in the country right now. Omar Ballo, we know, 12-10 at Arizona last year. I believe 24/7 Sports still has him as the number one transfer. Miles Rice, I was impressed with him when Washington State played Iowa State. Not a great shooter, 28% from three, but he is an actual point guard. And Indiana struggled with Xavier Johnson being hurt last year. And then they had a combo guard, Cannon Carlisle from Stanford. Those are three big gets for Indiana. I still feel like they need some shooting. But I will say, like, that's a pretty dang good start for Indiana in the portal. I still feel like they need two shooters around those guys. But if they can add that, I am intrigued by what Mike Woodson is doing. That needs to be a tournament team, though. That really needs to be a tournament team.
No, it's a must-win year for Mike for sure. And their NIL is not sparse at all. They're going out there and
probably number one in the Big Ten, right? Like,
yeah,
seems like for sure.
That's what it sounds like for sure. I mean, Omar Ballo, been reported that he was commanding like $1.2 million. I think we saw Jeff Goodman backtrack a little bit on that. I think it was, I don't know if it was Indiana or Ballo was like, hey, don't put that out there. But I mean, he was a seven-figure type of guy, and they're talented. They're talented as of right now for sure. The shooting is definitely glaringly lacking. Still, we'll see if Trey Galloway can get back to shooting the three like he did 2 years ago around Trace Jackson Davis and Hood Schifino. Obviously, that opens more things up for him than maybe it did last year, but him not shooting from the outside just made things all the more clunky. But they need at least one, if not two, like just shooters, dead shooters that they've had in their previous years. And Connor Essegian was somebody that they were pushing for or in the mix for. I know he ends up going to Nebraska. We'll see where they kind of pivot to next. They've dabbled with Ben Humrichous. I don't see them maybe being a huge player down the stretch, at least kind of what I've heard, but we'll see how that goes.
I feel like Humrichous would have fit better than Ballo, to be honest with you.
Right,
like,
yeah.
Ballo's a more proven player at this level. I get it. He's a bigger name, all of that. But like Malik Renew's a really good guy in the paint, right? Like Mbako is kind of this slashing big wing, but he's developing as a shooter. I feel like he can be one of the better players in the Big Ten, but it's like, it's just clogging the lane. So like they have added, Mike Woodson is getting talent, like top tier talent. Renew and Mbako are next level talents. Ballo, we know, is. So some of the guys they just added, especially Carlisle, like those guys are really good talents, but roster construction, you got to spread the floor out. You need some space in the Big Ten these days.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Mbako. I mean, number one, yeah, is trying to sell like a Humrichous. I mean, your 3 through 5 is pretty locked up. Mbako at the 3, Renew at the 4, Ballo at the 5. Those are all going to be big minutes guys. I will say Mbako was known as a pretty good shooter coming out of high school, and in Big Ten play last year, I think it was 37, maybe 38%. So he kind of figured it out from 3, and we'll see if he is kind of I don't know if he's going to be a dead eye shooter, but kind of a plus shooter from 3. And
I mean,
that's
he's got as high of a ceiling as like a lot of guys. If anybody returned in the Big Ten, like you talk NBA potential, that guy is pretty high up there.
Yeah, for sure. I think he was on draft boards going into the year as a projected pick, probably thought to be a one and done if he had the type of year that he could have had. Miles Rice, I don't know that if he was a freshman last year, so can he get the 3 ball to improve a little bit? I mean, he still put up 16 a game, 15, 16 a game, was an all Pac-12 guy, was the freshman of the year in the Pac-12. So on the talent note, they definitely have that. But yeah, as far as a fit, I definitely agree. I know that I'm going to keep calling him, Mike Woodson said that I still feel like college basketball is inside out. I think they've turned into inside out U. It would make more sense to have Renew at the 5, the ability to play Mbako at either the 3 or the 4, ideally probably at the 4, and then have a shooter next to them as far as floor spacing, allowing Renew to eat in the paint. Now it's going to be a little bit more clogged up, but Ballo is a shot blocker, pick and roll guy type, and he doesn't need the ball a ton. So that's another thing within the offense that maybe that's a difference between him and Ware as far as kind of how they'll use those guys.
It's weird to talk about UCLA in the Big Ten. They're the number 3 class. I don't know their roster well enough for the guys they've added well enough outside of Sky Clark, who is going to UCLA, goes home and plays for them. I do want to
get them on the schedule next year for Champaign. I want to see that.
Got to happen. UCLA or Missouri, I want to mention. Mark Mitchell from Duke goes to Missouri, and old friend Tony Perkins wants another shot at Illinois. Has he won? Yeah, he has one win against Illinois when he had a big game.
And the game he went for 30 something.
Yeah, so they've added him, so that's something to watch. I wanted to mention Missouri on here. Illinois currently the number 5 class. Michigan has had a pretty good weekend here. Danny Wolf out of Illinois from Yale, and then Trey Donaldson, Reuben Jones they've added. And obviously they lost Horace Reed, Doug McDaniel, Terrence Williams, but Dusty May's had a pretty good start here, the transfer portal. I like Danny Wolf a lot. And I know the internet rumors going around about John L. Davis and admissions and all that. Vlad Golden, we haven't heard much about here yet, so I don't know if any of those FAU guys are coming, but I think it's been a solid start for Dusty May.
For sure. Yeah, it will be very interesting. The Davis stuff without the rumors that he's not graduated and maybe won't graduate, and that's tough. I think that's tough for any admissions or a lot of, Illinois would be an issue as a non-grad coming in because it's all about the degree. You're going to have someone come in and fill credits for a year or less and try to give them a degree where you weren't at. So to make it more seamless for admission standpoint, you usually want that person to be someone that'll spend more than a year in your program or already have their degree. So Davis is one of the top players in the portal. I don't know as far as what that pivot would be if he's not going there. I've long expected and heard on the kind of the front end that if he didn't stay in the draft, which is draft stock right now, as far as I know, isn't going to indicate him doing that he would more than likely end up in Michigan because of the ties to May and also the assistant they brought from Georgia who actually recruited Davis there to FAU before he went to Athens. So Golden, it's been expected around circles that he's going to go to Michigan too, which is kind of made the Danny Wolf thing. It's long been said, or last few weeks been said that Wolf's top choice is Michigan. I'm just like, do you want to go there if Golden's going to be there? Because they got Cheddar, they got Cheddar back. I know he's kind of more of a 4, but Illinois was interested in Wolf. He was going to open that thing up, but they got that thing done. Michigan's going to have talent. They will, for sure, especially if they're able to get Golden. And I don't know what Elijah Martin's going to do.
He picked Florida today, I believe.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Florida, Yep.
So, yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I think their coaching will be better. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. But the other one I find interesting right now, Derek, is Ohio State. They've added Micah Parrish from San Diego State, good player, starter. Aaron Bradshaw, 4-star transfer, was I think a 5-star recruit that went to Kentucky. Michi Johnson put up huge numbers, is coming back to Ohio State after putting up huge numbers at South Carolina. But I thought Jake Diebler was hired to keep everybody, and Felix Okpara left today. Roddy Gale has left. Scotty Middleton has left. Zed Key, I'm not surprised by that one. Goes down a level to Dayton, and I think that's a great fit for him. I liked bigger Zed Key better myself, but Okpara, Gale, Middleton all gone. I don't know if Ohio State's gotten better. Like they had a talented roster. They still have a talented roster, but I just don't know if they've gotten better yet with Jake Diebler.
No, I fully agree with that. And it did seem like, I know that the talk was that he won over the athletic department and really did a great job with that roster down the stretch. Now you could counter and say Holtman did the same thing the previous year when they were inexplicably losing like 11 of 12 and then were a tough out in the Big Ten tournament and had some wins there. And they did the same thing last year, beating Purdue and were on the verge of beating Illinois if they didn't have a big comeback in that second half in Minneapolis. So, not getting those guys back. If Bruce Thornton went in the portal, then here in the next couple of weeks, that would just even be the stab to the heart for sure. They at least got him locked in as of now, as far as we know it. Could be an all-league guard, very, very talented, big physical. But yeah, Gale not coming back and Okpara, that, like you said, was kind of seemingly the expectation. They would have a really good chance to keep those guys if Diebler was retained. I am glad to see my buddy Jamal Walker getting the job there as an assistant in Columbus. Of course, former Illini on Gross's staff, and then here with Underwood for a few years. But yeah, they got some more work to do because they've added some nice pieces. They've lost some guys that they would have liked to keep.
You know, I would have called Brad Underwood the king of the transfer portal so far in the Big Ten. I just think he does it as well as anybody in the Big Ten right now. Obviously, Indiana is trying to do that. They've added as much talent as anybody, but Brad Underwood worked it as well. But the prince of the portal in the Big Ten might be Fred Hoiberg, and I love what he's doing. These are under the radar, maybe compared to the rest of these big names, but when we talk about roster construction, this guy gets it when it goes to the portal. He gets 2 shooters in Gavin Griffiths, who's a former, top 50, top 30 prospect that played for Rutgers last year, just on a bad team. Connor Essegian, great freshman year at Wisconsin, doesn't play this past year, but we know he can shoot the rock. And then they had 2 kids. Riley Worcester's not a kid. Utah point guard, doesn't shoot it a lot, 10 points, 5.5 assists, just a really good distributor. And then this Andrew Morgan kid from North Dakota State, just a perfect rink mask replacement, 13 points, 5 boards, 6'10", 245. Probably not a good athlete, but he shoots 37% from 3, and he can just be a guy who stretches the floor for you. So that's an under the radar class I want to mention because I love how he's navigating the portal the last couple of years, especially with some of the talent they got back, including Bryce Williams.
Yeah, no, that's great for him, and he obviously loaded up with transfers at Iowa State and did really, really well. Last year was a home run for him to get Mass and have him come in, and that was such a good dynamic. They were really good offensively, the way that he could stretch the floor, and Bryce Williams was a proven scorer who came in and made a nice splash for them as well. So getting the shooters, Griffiths is a good player, especially offensively with his ability to shoot. I know that he didn't shoot it great last year from 3, but should be capable of a lot better. And Essegian, I thought he was going to be one of the breakout players in the Big Ten. And that was before, I think, the Store edition, which maybe there was a little bit of overlap, or it seemed like he was in the doghouse for whatever reason with guard, and it didn't work for him this past season in Madison. But I think that he's someone that, yes, the talent hasn't, as far as offensively goes and be able to get buckets and shoot from the outside, hasn't gone away. So I think it's interesting. Like, he's probably moneyballing it some. Like, this is, I don't know how much NIL. You said it, like,
I've heard they're second tier.
Terrible.
Yeah, I've heard they're actually second tier when it comes to the Big Ten. And that, I don't know the numbers and all of that, but like, it's a fan base that is into basketball, man. They show up. So yeah, I think it's not to the Indiana, Illinois level, but it's probably better than people think, but I do think he's being smart about it. Like,
yeah.
I just don't know. Like, Omar Ba is a phenomenal player. Just a return on investment for what Indiana needs. I just thought it was a big splash to make a big splash. Like, I think Humrichous could have been a better return on investment for them and go get another great shooter and maybe another top. Like, Miles Rice is a good get. Like, you could have maybe even gotten a better guard than that. You know what I mean? Like, you got to start thinking about these things of how you allocate your dollars. I think Fred's probably doing it pretty well here with the 4 guys he's gotten so far.
Yeah, making pieces fit, having an identity, and offensively they certainly have one for sure in what they're doing. So I just like the way they're spending their resources, however they're going about it. And yeah, not to say that they're, I'm imagining that Penn State's probably in a worse position. Minnesota, I don't know what their NIL is like. So there are definitely programs around the Big Ten that are in worse shape and having to make some tough decisions in terms of NIL. But I like the fact that Nebraska is not in the mix for some of these huge names. They're just maybe keeping it mid-major and
they know who they are.
Senses, but yeah, they know who they are, and I just think it makes sense what they're going.
Yeah, I think they're like maybe like a supercharged Northwestern a little bit, like Northwestern with resources. Go after guys who are skilled, fit, maybe want to be here a couple of years. They're not chasing the big fish that it felt like he started off doing that with the McGowan's brothers, right? And I feel like he pivoted a little bit, and I think it was a smart move. Not that those guys weren't talented, but I just think he's found his kind of fit for what Nebraska is. Let's get to a few questions before we get out of here. Cleat, RIP the coaching hot board 2024 to 2024. That was an experience. Congrats to everybody on that thread. That was an all-timer. Put that hot board up on Tuesday. I've been itching to get it out there, Derek. Thank you to Brad Underwood for confirming Chester was leaving when West Virginia would not do it. But that was an all-timer thread with the 57 pages we end up before Orlando was announced.
And boy, it rallied today. It went crazy in a hurry. And I didn't know we were going to get 50 in. Like there was some buzz that the announcement was coming tonight, and we were geared up for it. I just didn't know that we were going to hit that 50 mark. So the people put the work in. The memes and GIFs were great. It was fun to follow along there for a while.
There wasn't a lot of fretting. Like 3 years ago, a lot of fretting when you lose 3 assistant coaches.
Yeah.
This one, Illinois fans felt pretty good. Obviously, we had hinted all along that Orlando, they had a pretty good chance at him. But it was a good vibes coaching search. Usually it's a little bit more fretting than this.
Yeah, I'm appreciative of kind of the in and out type of approach of hot board dropping on a Tuesday and we're sitting here on a Sunday and it's done. It's over with. That's the good stuff right there when you hit on your guy.
I always appreciate Josh Whitman. His searches are pretty expedient usually. So it's like a week coaching search is perfect. You can get some content, you can get some buzz going, but you're not like the drawn out, like the John Gross search and the Tim, like those just dragged on. So the quick expedient searches, but the Lovie Smith one I didn't like because we didn't get to talk about that one. We didn't get to do the content. It was just like Bill Cubitt's fired, Lovie Smith hired. It's like, wait, what? So this was well done by Brad Underwood.
Yeah, and if you look back to that offseason when they had to replace all 3 assistants, it took forever for Tim Anderson. Now, we had heard him earlier and kind of were able to maybe hint on that one, but that took forever to get through the AAU cycle, and he wasn't official till I think August 1st.
It took forever for Owen Chin to get to Kentucky. It was like a month, wasn't it, after the season?
Yeah, and then Gentry was like, he's not going to come back, but he hadn't officially moved on yet. So that thing really drug out, and there was a lot of angst, and I kind of get it at that time.
COVID. Where it's like, can they even interview people? Like, what's happening?
Yeah. And after Alan
Huss was on a Zoom call.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Owen Chin was so paramount in getting the guys that were part of that roster from the 1 seed and just where it was going to go from there. Like, not that I didn't trust Brad to be able to go out there and pivot, because that's one of his staples, is being able to pivot and have an answer for whatever gets thrown at him. And this was a huge one today.
Yeah. Last one we'll do here. Jim, is Ola possible one and done? Any inkling he's a head coach candidate who could be gone by next year? Oh, we got right to the worry here with Jim. I think Orlando he's been a head coach at USF. It didn't go well. And he's a guy who's going to be paid $1 million to be an assistant coach for the rest of his career. I just think some guys are great assistant coaches, and I think that's what Orlando is. If he wants to be a head coach in 3 or 4 years, he potentially could, Derek. He's 51 years old right now. He could be able to do that, but I think he'll be here a while. Like, I think this is a spot he really likes. I think he's with a head coach he obviously trusts, and one where he's going to be rewarded to be an assistant coach. And you could go as long as you want, probably, with Brad Underwood here. So I think probably a place you want to settle down for a while. But he's been the head coach of a Dominican Republic national team. He's been the head coach of a Division I program. So I won't put it past him. But I think he's going to be paid like one of the top assistant coaches in the country. And that to me is better than the G5 job.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that there's probably not a ton of interest to dive back into that if you're Orlando. I do know in the past he's commanded a little bit of NBA interest as far as maybe an assistant, just kind of the guys he's worked with. Again, he's worked with some really high-profile bigs. So if that ever came across, not that I don't think some coaches obviously are going to be turned off by the portal and NIL and just the wildness of roster building. I think that Orlando is one of those that could thrive in it because he's so good at recruiting and all of that. Like that plays into his strength. So I don't think that that's going to be a deterrent for him and drive him away. But I do think he's someone that could be wanted at that level at some point, or maybe again, because I think that's come his way before. But yeah, I do definitely believe he'll be here for a number of years. That would be the expectation on the front end for me. I don't think he's itching to get back into the head coaching seat. And I think he said to people, and it's been reemphasized to me here recently, like Lexington was the only place that he was interested in leaving Champaign for. So he left and did that thing. And now that he's settled back into Champaign and we'll get there, I wouldn't worry about another college program coming and picking him off for sure. He's going to be highly compensated and really, really loves Brad and who he's going back to work with.
Did I see Jeremiah Fierce had a 50 piece the other day?
I saw that. Yeah.
That's prep recruiting. Like, there's going to be some guys that you don't want to add anymore because of the transfer portal. The Marez Johnsons and Jeremiah Fierce of the world, you still want to build around those guys. Pretty impressive. I thought of that because somebody asked any connections for Orlando with AJ DeBasanta, who's the number 1 overall prospect. He's got a perfect composite rating. I don't know if I've ever seen that. Obviously would be a high school to pros guy if that was the rule still. So one of the best prospects to come out in a while. Illinois has offered him. Jeremiah Fierce is connected to him. Get him on campus at some point. That'd be nice to see. But I don't know if Antigua has. I know Kentucky offered him, obviously.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one. I know that his family lives in the Boston area. And actually, his dad was at, I think, one of, if not both of those games out there at TD Garden. So there's been a relationship that's been built. Yes, Jeremiah is helping Illinois there. Is said that AJ is one of his guys. You know, they've known each other from the circuit and performing a lot of these high profile camps that they go to. So that's something that they're looking into. I don't think they're necessarily they're not holding their breath on that. And I think it would come to the conversation. I think that it would be interesting if you're in that realm of trying to get somebody like that, how much NIL it would take to get a freshman versus maybe what you could do in the portal. I think that kind of makes you think and wonder. Now you're not
this type of freshman, especially like this is
different though. Yeah, it's different.
No, but like it's expensive. It's really, 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 really expensive. But
and he'll be wanted by everybody, so that's another thing too.
To have like a number 1 overall pick on your team, though, what is the value of that? It's worth more than $2 million.
Yeah, I would think so.
You mentioned it though, Derek. My lead line of my 7 thoughts column, which I'm writing the rest of the night. This is how you operate like a big time basketball program, and that's what Illinois is doing. And this is the latest sign of that. So, any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I think that just the vibe I got around Orlando is just that he's number 1. He's thrilled to be back for sure. I know he said that he's got a lot of really close friends on this staff that he's looking forward to working with again, and just the idea that he helped prop this program back up and really was able to leave them in a position to sustain success, and now popping back in and trying to push this thing forward. And I think this. To kind of rehash a little bit, it speaks to the relationship that he has with Brad and just how highly he thinks of him as a head coach, and just the resources also at Illinois to be able to go out there and recruit and sell what this program has to sell. So what a monster addition by Brad Underwood, monster get. Can't wait to see the impact. I fully expect him to have his fingerprints on what Illinois does going forward in the portal. And I think that also I mentioned Kerry Booth. I know someone said in the comments, Perez Johnson should be really happy too that this addition was made, that he gets to work with him as well. So
yeah, Orlando's inheriting a little bit better situation than what he inherited when he first came to Illinois. That's for sure.
Yeah, no offense to him, but like Michael Finke at the 5, and they brought in Matisse, Vasile, and Greg Aboigbedin, and Samba Kane after that. A little bit different, but it's something that, Brad Underwood deserves a lot of credit. Illinois acting like you said, big time program, and this was a monster get.
Thank you to the 900 plus that are on our live YouTube channel. The Illini fan base pretty pumped up, and they should be, for Orlando Antigua coming to Illinois. Of course, now there will be a lot that happens as Orlando Antigua gets to campus and starts recruiting, and Derek Piper's been all over that. He's doing a phenomenal job covering all the ins and outs of Illinois' transfer portal. No days off for Derek and us.
The off season yet?
May. I hate to quote John Rothstein, but we sleep in May, Derek. That's true for us right now, because the April is becoming our busiest month. We got a lot of football recruiting to get to after the spring game. It's 50% off right now at Illini Inquirer. I've had so many people sign up. We appreciate all your support. But if you are not a VIP member yet, now is the time to do it, because April is where you get your values worth. You do every month of the year, but this is like really, really where the stuff is really, really good. And Derek is covering the heck out of it. So check us out at Illini Inquirer. Thank you to everybody for watching us on our live YouTube channel. Hit that like button, subscribe to us, hit the notifications bell. And thanks to everybody for listening to us on the audio podcast. Give us a follow, rating, review wherever you get your podcasts. Everybody have a great night. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer Podcast.